really, one of the problems with process safety incidents is that they are, I say it's a problem, it's actually a feature rather than a bug. They are rare. And if they are rare and they happen only once every 20 years or so in a country, the impetus to do something meaningful and rigorous about process safety it can be lost as things fade into memory. The impetus is lost to do things. So it is generally incidents that provoke companies into action. And this was the case with a client of ours a couple of years ago now. They had had a couple of incidents. Resultant out of that was the undertaking of a review stroke audit of the systems that were in place, which enabled the company to identify gaps in the way that process safety was managed. That gap was the subject of a policy and subsequent procedures for filling those gaps. Those procedures were implemented by senior managers and engineers down the hierarchy, and the reporting took place to see if it was doing any good. The policy deployment, it used to be POPMAR, which was plan, organize, then another P, measure, some audit and review, I think, something like that. But it's simpler than that. It's plan, do it, check that it's working, and identify what actions you need to take as a result. And you go around and around that little hamster wheel, planning, doing, checking, and act. It should not take an incident to precipitate that sort of implementation. It should be done simply because we're good employers and we want to make sure that we learn from experience and that we continually improve over time. So just to wrap up, I shall take you through some recent experience we had with a client and what we did for them for improving their process safety management system. So this particular company, they'd had a series of minor process safety related incidents. So let me just go back a slide. Incidents right at the top. This is what precipitated their review. They'd had a small fire and a pressure relief system, actually a pressure relief valve had failed to reseat, and there was a continuous release as a result of that. Nobody was hurt during these, but they happened sufficiently close together in the company that they were very happy to take some action against it. So there was an audit that revealed gaps in the hazard identification process that they were operating. They had done a HAZOP, but they hadn't done a recent one, and they'd had different people coming in with slightly different techniques, and to be honest, there were slightly different levels of quality as well with their HAZOPs. There was aging equipment, and they weren't alone in that, and inconsistent training as well. And that was when we did hazard studies for them, that came across during those meetings. We'll point out that they were compliant with the legal minimums, but to quote, the process safety management system was fragmented and reactive. It was not proactive. They hadn't done their due diligence, shall we say. So in 2023, they had a senior management review and decided to up their game. Their aim was to become, or at least to set themselves on the path to become what's known as a high reliability organization. That's more management speak than I wanted to go into in this webinar, but it's essentially transforming of a company, not only from a safety point of view, but also from a business point of view as well. Perhaps I'll do a webinar on that a little later, but the idea was that they would launch a process safety management system improvement program. And ultimately, this was to change the culture within the company as well. It had traditionally been a little laissez-faire. So there were a number of things that we went in and helped them do. And I've split these out into the pillars that we noticed from the CCPS and just pulled out a few of the important ones. So pillar number one, if you remember, was commitment to process safety. So we gave the leadership training sessions. The CCPS has training materials available, but senior leaders within this company were not really understanding previously what information they were being presented with. So it enabled them to correctly resource whatever policy they needed to implement following these audits. They established a vision, and they linked their performance indicators, these key performance indicators as they called them. When talking about process safety, call them that, call them process safety performance indicators. Make them relevant, change them from time to time. If one is running static, go and measure something else that isn't static, and make sure that the frequency with which you're analysing the results is appropriate for the kind of KPI or PSPI that you're looking at. And they got a cross-functional process safety steering committee. So this is something I mentioned previously about workforce engagement. I think they met, it was once a month to begin with, and then those meetings became less and less frequent, but they maintained them, and it never dropped off the radar throughout. So that was commitment one. That was the leadership functions. Under pillar two, the hazards, understanding the hazards and the risks. Their drawings were shocking. They updated their P&IDs to an as-built status, which was great to see. And we did a phased run of HAZOP review. It's a good practice to review your HAZOPs once every 5 years, and if there's been any major change, of course. The reason for doing it every 5 years is that you can miss stuff over time, and it's to capture the cumulative effect of many small changes. For example, you might have little changes of, for example, operating conditions, but they can affect long-term health of the plant. Corrosion, for example, can be affected. So it was a good thing to do. They got them in a consistent format with a consistent means of scoring, so that they had a consistent means of comparing relative risk. So they knew that what was going to hurt them fastest and most was going to always come out at the top. So it was a very useful thing to do. Now, where we'd identified particular high risk from those scenarios, they went ahead and did a layers of protection analysis. And this is to compare the safeguarding that they had with the safeguarding that is required in order to be compliant with the law. So this is a gap analysis, if you like. And there are various means of filling that gap. It doesn't have to be a safety instrumented system. It could be for something very, very simple and cheap, like getting the operator out of the area during a particular time, for example. But layers of protection analysis, or LOPA, is traditionally associated with safety instrumented systems. So the next pillar was the managing the risk. And because they had an aging plant, it was a mechanical integrity program, which was right at the top of their list. It was a phased program of enhanced inspections, identification of critical equipment, and sequenced planned replacement and updating. After that, they updated the operating procedures, this time with operator involvement. They included things like photographs of particular items of equipment that might be being used, but they also included why we are asking operators to do a certain action and linking it into the potential scenario that could have resulted if they hadn't done it. So there was a clear linkage between what the operator is being asked to do and why he is being asked to do it. This is another reason for bringing operators into things like the HAZOP and the HAZID, because it shows them very, very clearly why it is that we ask them to do things, because the consequences of the accident can be significant. And the third thing they did was to digitize the permit to work system. This was a bit of the paper-based system wasn't too bad, to be honest, but the traceability was so much better with a digitized system. As long as it works, I'm reasonably happy. And then under pillar 4, the learning from experience bit. Root cause analysis training for supervisors. So the reason that relief valve and the reason that they'd had the fire were not terribly well understood. So root cause analysis training for supervisors was a good thing to do. And they decided to develop a lessons learned database for other sites as well. This is very good. This is sharing information. A wise man said that, no, somebody said that a wise man learns from his mistakes, but a wiser man learns from the mistakes of others. So you don't need to learn the lesson yourself. You can learn it from other people. There's a wealth of information out there. Before, I don't know if it's still available, but there was a website run by the European Union on reporting of incidents and so on, and there was a huge database there. Usually it was very good, depending on which country was submitting them, but you could look at these and say, okay, let's have a look at accidents involving chlorine, for example, and somebody had had some corrosion as a result of chlorine, or used the wrong material in a gasket, and you can think, well, actually we use chlorine, we've got gaskets on ours, perhaps it might be worth a look. So this is why I put that little note in at the bottom there. Lessons from across industry are equally important. If you can learn from others, it can save you the pain from having to learn for yourselves. So what did that achieve for them? Now, what was quoted to me was a 60% reduction in process safety incidents. I need to caveat that, really. It depends what they're measuring at the time. I'm not privy to that information at the moment. But if you thought of process safety incidents as things like explosions, and you went down from 0 to 0, that's not a reduction. So they must have been measuring something else, and I suspect it was things like losses of containment, number of times a piece of equipment has failed, number of times an alarm has gone off, or a pressure safety relief valve is lifted, something along those lines. But that's significant. And of course, every time you do reduce one of those process safety incidents, you're essentially uplifting your availability, your plant availability. So it's going to affect your bottom line. It's very rare that I give good news like this. Safety can actually be productive for you as well. They did run process safety audits, and their scores went up 68 to 92%, which was marvelous to see. And they did increase workforce engagement and retention. Again, that's difficult to measure how well somebody is engaged, but if you look at the way that near misses are reported, the willingness of employees to cite examples of where there may have been a failing, for example, and what kind of failing that is, that was the kind of thing that they were looking at, and it paid dividends for them as a result. So it can affect your bottom line in that way.